are you doing today?
Good morning, Max. I'm doing very good today. How are you?
I'm doing well. There's stuff going on around the house, but I'm hidden away from it, so it's all good.
Perfect. We can't hear anything actually, so I guess it's far away from your computer. I hope you don't mind, but for today, it's not that I'm getting tired of our conversations, but I thought it would be so much funnier to have a special guest. Is that okay with you? I've invited someone.
I love that idea. Have you got someone good? I only want it if it's someone good.
I don't take anyone good. I only take fantastic people, right?
Even better. Even better.
And this person I've invited is not just a customer experience expert of some sort. He is CEO and journey mapper in chief. I don't know if you know so many journey mappers in chief
That's
around you.
That's a rare title, to say the least.
At heart of the customer. So please help me welcome Jim Tincher to come on board with us. How, Jim? How are you doing?
I'm doing excellent. Thanks. I'm glad to be here.
Well, hey, Jim. Then, good to see you.
Hey there. Good seeing you.
If you're happy to be with us, I hope you won't mind. We're going to ask you to lie down on our therapy couch, because one of the reasons why I invited you is because I do feel you have a story to share with us today.
I do have a story to share today about how I led the world's least effective customer experience program and what that taught me leading into what we do today.
But you sound very proud.
Well, it's always proud after recovery, but at the time, not so much.
Okay,
well, let's try to help with that recovery process then.
Sure.
Should we get started? Tell us what happened.
So 12 years ago, I left Best Buy, very, here in the States, a retailer, very customer-focused organization. Before that, I was a small business. And, I grew up in Iowa, maybe a little naive. I just thought every company was customer obsessed. That's just the way you operate. And then I learned there were other models. I joined a very large health insurance organization. Specifically in the area, I led the nation's largest line of health savings accounts. And as I came in, I was being told about how customers just love health savings accounts, or HSAs. They get really into them. They like to learn all about them. They like to understand the tax benefits, which probably should have been a red alarm to me. But I thought, wow, that's interesting. I can't get people that interested in a television. How are you getting so into HSAs?
Tax benefits.
Well, of course, the answer was they weren't. The hiring manager was. He had at that time 8 of his own health savings accounts with different companies and was passionate about it. And as I got in, I discovered that literally nobody in marketing or product development had ever met a client. And so when I asked about that, they said, well, we don't need to because we're customers ourselves. And so I started actually going out, talking to customers, going to clients. I started discovering some of the problems. And they created a role for me that today we would call customer experience. Now, this was back in 2008, so that language wasn't quite out there yet. I called it customer insights. And I created the world's worst program. Oof. And what I did is I used some of the things we do today, which I brought leaders out to hear from customers, and we identified some of the problems. We had the world's most complicated health savings account out there. Because, again, we were building what we wanted to buy. Our materials were based on tax savings and facts and figures because that's what we wanted to learn. And identified all these challenges. But I completely failed to change anything. And so I did identify all these problems. But in terms of trying to move the culture, I tried going from the bottom up. I tried appealing to emotion, saying we need to listen to customers. But I completely ignored several factoids that would have made my life a lot easier. Okay. So first of all, Matt, so let's pretend you are in corporate America. I don't know if RingCentral offers health savings accounts. But
we do.
Well, you do? Okay. So let's say you have the right health plan available for the HSA. RingCentral is going to put $300 in your account if all you do is click on the button to open the account. What do you do? Yeah, you're in, right? 14% of people were not opening the account.
Oof.
And since we owned a bank, RingCentral put $300 in your account. That would be in our bank. We would get the money off of that. So 14% of people were not opening the account. clearly a customer experience problem. The world's easiest business KPI right there. I mean, all I had to do was say, look how much money we're missing on this 14%. Let's fix that. No, what I did instead is I said, we should just listen to customers. Our survey scores aren't as high as they should be. We really need to work on that and listen to customers instead of saying, we could make millions of dollars if we made it easier to work with us. Now, it gets worse in terms of my failure to be a good CX person, which is we got secondary data, or syndicated data, actually, I should say, that showed all the different players in the marketplace. And it was all blind, but we knew what our data was. And we discovered that we led the nation. First of all, I should say we did lead the nation in sales. And sales will cover a lot of sins. We also had a distinction of leading the nation in the percentage of customers who canceled their accounts.
Ouch.
And not quite the great distinction. So again, I have the world's easiest business problems to address. I should be able to build the best business case in the world. What did I do? I said we should listen to customers, and you're doing it all wrong. And so I completely failed to drive any change. And so I left after 2.5 years, and really, in fact, a lot of those same practices are still there here 12 years later. And that's what actually led my journey to figure out how do people do it the right way. And I have.
What was your mission when you started?
I have learned in the years since then. So.
What was your mission when you started? What was the objective that you were given?
Well, I started out as a product guy. And so I thought, well, if I'm going to make money, I'm going to go after this 14%. But I didn't ever articulate that. I mean, that would have made my life a lot easier, because I could have said, hey, here's how many millions of dollars we're losing. Let's spend this much to fix it. Boom. And I didn't do that. But the mission, my personal mission, was to create a better customer experience.
Okay, so I guess you had the first obvious problem of know your audience at that stage, right?
Yeah.
Of what language is this audience talking? And whenever you're talking CX, is usually talking to the guy above you, and he usually talks about dollars more than actual customer experience. So you probably had to transfer that beautiful know your customer, talk to your customer language into how much cash does that represent. I guess that would have been one of the pieces.
Yes, definitely. That would have been the piece to start with. And in fact, we've interviewed this last year 100 people in customer experience. I found that they're all having the same problem.
Go ahead.
I was, because let me see if I can summarize at least a part of the problem, that you were painting a big picture, but there were simple, practical, significant, I'll use the word tactical, but I think that's giving it short shrift, things that you could have done would have improved the customer experience, would have improved the bottom line at the same time. So it is a lot of this about not, just standing up there and swinging for the fences instead of saying, hey, well, let's get this single. Hey, let's get this double, and kind of doing it stepwise? Or is it different than that?
Really, it was the fact that, and I see this play a lot, just assuming I had a native assumption that when you make the experience better, the business gets better. But I never drew that straight line. I never showed how by doing this, you'll do this. So others were had these wonderful strategies. So thinking big was not a big deal. But they were thinking big strategies, but weren't based on the customer and bring it together. So one example they put in place just before I got there was, so let's go back, Max, you're a brand new HSA holder. You get a letter in the mail, 2 pages, black and white, form letter, has a survey for you to fill out, total up your scores, ask you like 5 or 6 questions, total up your scores, then look up your scores of this table over here, and it will tell you which of 3 pricing plans is right for you. Fill that out, put it back in the mail, send it out, and then you'll get your new pricing plan. That's what are the odds you do that?
1 in 10,000.
It's not quite that bad. It's 1.5%. So either we got the pricing right for 98.5% of our customers, or nobody wanted to deal with it. But you know who did want to deal with that? The product managers, who were sure that customers did too, because they wanted to. And because they thought, and again, to come at a comment, we don't need to talk to customers because we are customers. Yes, the most oddball, ridiculous customers in the world. Because, I don't know, Max, maybe you think about your health savings account, a half hour a month at the most?
Nowhere near that often.
Yeah, no, right. We think about 8 to 10 to 12 hours a day. And we think we have to think the same way you do. We don't.
Well, I'm struck by 14% of your customers won't click enroll. Why do you think they're going to fill out a form and mail it back?
Well, that was the 86% who clicked the button, anyways. But yes,
well, true enough, yeah.
But again, that's because we think it's easy. One of the other problems we had, I did our first satisfaction study, and I asked the teams, what do customers care about? And they care about understanding the tax benefits, was what the marketing group said. Being able to have your debit card work across multiple different types of savings accounts, the product team wanted. Do you know what the customers wanted? They wanted to be able to log into the website. So we used a single sign-on, which, as you know, single sign-on means you have multiple passwords, or at least in our world it did. Also, Max, if you forget your password, we can reset it for you. If you put in that 14-number code we sent you on your welcome packet, back
of course, I got that right at hand, no problem whatsoever.
Exactly. Your debit card doesn't work. It's got to be that number, and so, but nobody was focused on that problem because it's not sexy, it's not glitzy, and you know what? None of the product managers needed to know that number because they logged in every day. They knew what their password was.
It does make complete sense with what you told us earlier. Biggest number one when it comes to sales, because you have the glitter thing that attracts new customer. Number one when it comes to churn, because you can't keep these customers because the experience is actually not good. So there you go. Your two numbers, your two figures are actually explained by the rest of your stories. There is a real problem, and we see this in so many companies that look very glamorous when it comes to prospects and much less sexy when it comes to actual customers that you need to keep and satisfy.
Definitely. Yeah. And so that's what really led off to this whole company here, is trying to figure out how to prevent future Jims from ending up in that situation. And so we did these interviews. We found that it's really the same problem. That now you have survey scores. But we would interview people, and I would ask them, if I were to ask you whether the customer experience is getting better or worse, how would you answer that question? And one of my favorites is Lisa. She's a client I really enjoy. She's with Walters Kluwer Financial Services, and she started the same way most people do. Well, I would look at my Net Promoter Score. Okay, my heart started to break. And then she said, but then I'd also look at what's happening at the contact center. Are we getting a lot of calls there, or not? Is something broken? What about retention? Do we have an issue with retention? Are we retaining our customers? Are we adding on new products? And that restored my faith in Lisa. But it was rare. And most people were saying, I just looked at the survey score. So then I would ask them next, how would your CEO answer that question? And a lot of people said they would look at the survey score. But then I would say, how would your favorite finance person answer whether the customer experience is getting better or worse? That was met with a lot of silence. One person said, well, you're assuming I know somebody from finance. You're right. That was one of my assumptions. Yeah, you got that right.
Wow.
And that's what we see is one of the big problems with customer experience. They assume that if the survey scores get better, that everybody believes the customer experience is getting better and the business is getting better. But we found those programs that were really having impact. We found that they had taken the time to say, well, the customer experience surveys, that's just a diagnostic. We can use the behavioral and operational data to say what's happening and then tie that to the financial data. We might not even need a survey. If we find out that you're spending 3 hours, you're spending 45 minutes on hold in the call center, do I need a survey to see how you felt about that experience?
Probably not.
Exactly. It's tied right in there. So that's been really one of the big missions. Other people are thinking the same way I did. They aren't thinking through from a business health perspective.
So here's my question to you, because I mean, now, if I have a Jim Tincher walking into my company, I'm going to trust you because you have your background, you have your story, people know you for being a CX expert. That might not be the case for someone new in this industry. So from these hundreds of interviews you've had in the past, journey mapping is a difficult exercise. You never know where to start because you have so much data to analyze. You talked about NPS, which is just a tiny piece of the overall big picture that you need to figure out. So if you had one piece of advice to give to the yourself from a few years ago walking into this new company, what would be that piece of advice? Where do you start and how do you make it successful?
Follow the money. Really start with, if I had gone instead saying, here are the millions of dollars we're losing, if we were to make it easier, we could save those millions of dollars. I might still be there. I hope not, but it might be.
We might be running the place.
I was brought into the vice president of sales office saying, you make a lot of noise. So, it maybe would have been less noisy if I did start with what the rest of the organization is focused on, which is how do we make more money? And tie that to retention, tie that to getting more people to sign up, tie that to making a simpler experience. And then the other part is, I would also say then look for that emotional part and tie to that. The emotions we were creating was frustration. Now, I would not talk to the Jim of 12 years ago and say, how do you make such a great experience that people will tattoo your HSA logo on their arms? No, not that experience, but a feeling of confidence, for example, is one of the things we found the great programs are doing is they're tying to an emotion. That would be the other part. So start with the money and then tie it to an emotional outcome.
All right. Well, I think that's fantastic advice for anyone watching this video. Now, tell me, do you feel better? Is the recovery process going well for you? Do you feel better after talking with us?
Very therapeutic. Yes, I do feel better. Thank you.
All right. Fantastic. Thank you so much for your time, Jim. Thank you, Max. And I think I will talk to you again next week. Thank you, guys.
Thank you both.
Thanks, guys. Bye.